Welcome in, everybody, to another week of UFL Weekly. I am Kyle Krajewski, joined by this lovely gentleman down here, Zach Cole. Zach, what's up, dude?
Not much. Not much. We're chugging along through spring here. It's kind of crazy. This is what our third week under our belt already.
Yeah, week 3.
We were waiting for it to get here, and it's flying, man. So we're already approaching that halfway point of the season, but I'm fired up to break it down with you.
Yes, so we're going to break down week 3, how that looked. We're going to preview week 4 and talk a little bit right here, some news around the league as we are currently recording. Before we get into that, we are UFL Weekly. We're here to just chat and discuss all things UFL Weekly. You can follow us on socials, primarily on X or Twitter at UFL_weekly. You can find us on YouTube at UFL Weekly, or if you're watching us on YouTube already, you can find us on podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Just search UFL Weekly, you'll find us. So, without further ado, let's get into some of these news. We've got one great news, one super unfortunate news.
Some good news and some bad news, right?
Yep. Let's start with the good news. Let's kick us off with some on a high note. Battlehawks wide receiver Jacquor Pearson has returned to practice, and in his own words on Instagram says he will be playing on Saturday. So
awesome.
that is unconfirmed if he will. However, it's looking like he's on track to play. He's back in practice. This guy can play. He was the XFL leading receiver. He was basically the number one guy in the XFL last year. So for the Battlehawks to kind of get him back in on a receiving core that's already stacked. I mean, Butler, Shepard, and not Durant. Who's the and Aitman.
Marcel Aitman.
Yeah, Aitman's been the number one guy. Butler overtook it again this week. Shepard's kind of been there consistently number 2. But we've seen, I mean, this receiving core is stacked, and we get Jacquor Pearson back, and I'm excited to see him back on the field.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with what I was going to say. The rich get richer here. It's incredible that they're going to have this now 4-headed monster that's just nuts. And I mean, we're going to kind of talk about him a little bit later, but we were questioning not Hakeem Nicks. We were questioning, I told it, Hakeem Butler. Sorry, I just flashed back to like the year 2011 right there. We got to see, we were kind of talking down on him last week, but we got to see him pop back off this week. He turned it around. So now we've seen big things from Pearson. From Butler. We've seen big things from Marcel Aitman. It's unbelievable. And to kind of give a little nod of confidence for Jacquor Pearson, when we saw him, he was outshining Josh Gordon in the Sea Dragons offense. So, I mean, Ben DiNucci was known to sling the rock around a little bit, but I think that he's going to find AJ McCarron's going to give him a lot of love too. So this is just incredible for the Battlehawks, and I think that it does make them even deadlier as an offense.
Yeah, we get a Battlehawks team that seemed to have figured themselves out offensively this past week. Really looked solid. AJ McCarron just finally gets another, as if he needed it. He gets another weapon in the passing attack. But huge news for the Battlehawks. Huge news for Jacquor Pearson making his return. Happy it wasn't a season ender that we saw in preseason, but he's back. Did his 5 weeks on IR. He's coming. He's making his return. Downside of that, not that specifically. The bad news here is that the Brahmas lost quarterback Chase Garbers to the IR with the wrist injury. An injury that obviously it took place during the game, but most likely took place kind of in the later period of the game. But wrist injury from Chase Garbers. He's out a minimum of 5 weeks. That's kind of what the IR rules here are in the UFL. So he could theoretically make a return later in the season, but it's not likely. I think it's one of those things where he'll probably if he returns, probably to a backup role, if at all. Probably just get some more things in this, more tape for him. But I think it's looking like he may not return this year. But overall, the Brahmas lose Chase Garbers to IR for 5 weeks. But we get Quentin Dormady back up for the Brahmas,
He's
stepping
back.
in now as the starter. Last year for the Orlando Guardians, he was really solid kind of in the later
Mhm.
half of the season. Actually had some really good games, looked really good as a starter. So this isn't, I guess, a steep drop off in starter caliber for the Brahmas at quarterback, but
Mhm.
certainly stinks to see Garbers go down. And my last note before I turn it back over to you, Zach, and let you speak for once. Keep an eye out for Cody Latimer, tight end / wide receiver for the Brahmas. He and Dormady last year had a really good rapport.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so keep an eye on some Latimer showing up here in these games with Dormady at quarterback.
That's a fantastic point that you ended off on there. He was really really good with Dormady. He was one of the few bright spots for the Guardians last year. But yeah, no, this is just a tough loss with Garbers going down. I think that I feel for Wade Phillips a little bit because if you remember last year,
Yep.
things were sunny all year long in Roughneck Land, and then Brandon Silvers went down, and that kind of they brought in Cole McDonald, and that just didn't pan out real well. So, it's cool to see. Well, it's not cool. It stinks. It's neat to see Dormady coming in, and we're getting a familiar face back in who did well. You mentioned he did have he had 10 touchdowns in the XFL last year, which is not anything to turn your nose up at. But losing Garbers, who was leading the league in passing touchdowns, definitely does hurt. But I think the key statistic with Garbers, though, is that he was only fifth in passing yards in the league. And he did have 6 passing touchdowns. So it feels like the type of thing where hopefully plugging and playing Dormady will be okay because, it's not a super high flying, slinging the ball all over the place offense. But you can see that the key is just making good decisions and getting those touchdowns when they're needed. So hopefully he's able to slot in here and we don't see a huge drop off for the San Antonio Brahmas, who are having a great start to the season.
Yeah, Garbers was a guy that even the UFL on their own site posted a power rankings for MVP candidates,
Hmm.
and Garbers was number one headed into week 3. So Garbers
Hmm.
had a great start to the season, and I think we saw kind of some injured play towards the in the second half or later stages of this past game, and obviously he was hurt. So shout out Garbers. Hoping you a quick recovery. Hoping to see you back out here on the field next year. Rooting for you, pal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk week 3. Just a slight before we kind of get into overall. I want to give a shout out to our MVP of the week. Something new here we're going to do here on
Hmm.
UFL Weekly. MVP of the week for week 3. Quarterback of the Birmingham Stallions, Adrian Martinez. Adrian Martinez balled out this week. This man,
Fantastic.
Adrian Martinez, finally got the start for week 3. Head coach Skip Holtz finally, instead of running the 2 QB system between
Hmm.
Martinez and Corral that we had seen the previous 2 weeks, finally was just like, you know what? I'm going to give Martinez a shot here to start. And we saw a great game come out of it to the point where Corral didn't even attempt a single pass.
Mm-mm.
Martinez was a fantastic. We got 18 for 28, 334 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and then added another 44 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground. This man, I think he's leading the league in rushing yards currently. Yeah, leading the league in
That's
rushing
correct.
yards
Yep.
and had a fantastic game in the air this past week. This guy just had a dominant game, and it's bonkers to me that Birmingham is undefeated 3-0 and just figured out their quarterback situation. I mean, that just kind of goes to show how dominant this team can and will be
Yeah.
moving forward. So, shout out Adrian Martinez. You are our MVP of the week.
Yeah, it's also very telling, I think, of this Birmingham offense that you mentioned. They're just figuring out Adrian Martinez is their guy now. He's their leading rusher. The second leading rusher in the league is Maribel, their running back. Their leading receiver is Deion Kane. Like the pieces just look all there for the Birmingham Stallions. And I think we mentioned with Chase Garbers going down, if Martinez stays healthy and sticks in this role all season, I would like to think he's probably going to be the favorite to win the MVP.
Yeah, if he keeps dominating on the ground like
Hmm.
he has been, and I mean, continues what he just did in the air, we've got our MVP right here.
Yeah, those are real standout stats. I mean, going over 300 passing is big in a spring football league. I mean, we see a lot of 250s, 270s as like high end passing weeks, but to go over three is impressive. And his rushing attempts were he only ran the ball 5 times. And you mentioned he picked up 44 yards, which is over eight a carry, which is nuts. So this is a standout performance.
Yeah. So great work, Martinez. Let's take a look before we look at no, we'll talk standings after. The heck is that? For those of you tuning in, for some reason the screen just gave a thumbs up thought bubble next to me as I gave a thumbs
How
up.
did that happen? We broke our streaming site.
They broke
I
our
can't get one.
recording service. All right. Well, that'll never happen again. Oh, fireworks
Oh,
now.
we got fireworks.
What did I do? You got the double thumbs up, you get fireworks. I'm never gonna turn that off. That's
That's
interesting.
awesome.
All right. All right. We'll talk about the standings after we kind of get into after each game here.
Yeah, let's give a
So let's
quick
get
breakdown
into
here.
each game here of week 3. Kicking us off in the weekend, we saw the DC Defenders defeat the Arlington Renegades 29-28. And Zach, I think we've got a rivalry here. These two teams do not like each other. This was an XFL championship recap where the Renegades defeated the Defenders, but in this rematch, the Defenders took over. However, DC won this with a successful alternate possession. We saw it again, Zach, and I'd like
Yeah.
to recap, or I don't blank on the word. Retract the statement from last week. The alternate possession is 4th and 12. We said 4th and 15 last week.
Mm-hmm.
It's 4th and 12, and not 4th and 15. So this week, DC attempted that. They were down 28-18 with less than a minute left in the game. Scored a touchdown, converted 2 points, and then they were like, we got to do this alternate possession, bad boy. Went for the 4th and 12, converted, went for the field goal, and won. Shout out DC. And shout out DC's kicker, Matthew McCrane. Remains a perfect 9 for 9 this season, hitting from 58, 54, and 49 this week, including that game winner. Just bonkers. The kicking in this league is looking incredible.
That's what I was going to say. If there's one thing that's holding true in the UFL through 3 seasons, or through 3 weeks, it's that the kickers are just on a next level. I mean, we talked about Blewett last week. We've talked about now we've talked about Matt McCrane, and we talked about our boy Jake. He's killing it with the Panthers. But yeah, this is definitely a rivalry. I think we got a high scoring game again, much like the XFL championship from last season. That was, I think, 35-29 or 35-26, if I remember right. 35-26. So this is clearly going to be a recurring rivalry that we're seeing head to head. We do get to see it again this season because each XFL division member plays each other twice, I believe, according to the schedule. So it'll kind of be like a home and home series. But I think this is also a great advertisement for the alternate possession. Again, we've seen last week it proves true. This week it proves true. I think the one thing that we'll have to take a look at, though, is if we keep seeing this trend where the team converts the alternate possession and then wins the game, like it kind of is like a 100% correlation. I think they might need to go back to that 4th and 15 idea rather than the 4th and
Yeah.
12. It might just be a little bit too easy, because if you convert a one play 12-yard play, a one down 12-yard play, that kind of like gets your drive rolling, and like that's a lot of momentum, and the defense has to be like, oh shoot, And I think that that's
Yeah.
an underrated part of this alternate possession, is that
Immediately after giving up a touchdown too.
right. That's a lot of negativity going through the defense's head. So I think that that's something to consider as well. Maybe that 4th and 15 is the sweet spot, especially in the NFL, where maybe we're going to see that the offenses are a little bit more potent. But speaking of potent offenses, Luis Perez has continued to just do his thing. We kind of
Oh my
touted him as
gosh.
one of
Yeah.
the better quarterbacks in the league, and he didn't disappoint in this game. He went for 290, which we mentioned Martinez was kind of outstanding at that 300 mark. But I mean, 290 is a hell of a game too. And now he leads the league in passing yards, and he's over 100 above the next closest guy. So that's kudos to him. That's big, even though they didn't come up with a win in this one.
Yeah, Perez is looking like one of the most consistent quarterbacks in this league
Mm-hmm.
currently. Dude has just been holding his own on this Renegades team. Unfortunately, they kind of lost it there in the final minute, but he's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a large part of why they were, up by 10 in the fourth quarter. And then back to DC, Teamu passed for 188, 2 passing touchdowns, and then led the team in rushing yards. So he's trying to
Yeah,
do
been
it all.
consistent. Yep.
Yeah. This is again. I think the Perez Teamu. I think that specifically is a rivalry, but Renegades Defenders is going to be one of those matchups that you're going to want to circle every week when it happens
Mm-hmm.
again. Game 2 of the weekend, we saw the Memphis Showboats take on the Birmingham Stallions. We touched on this game a little bit earlier with Adrian Martinez. But the Birmingham Stallions just dominated this game, essentially on both sides of the ball, defeating the Showboats 33-14. Other than Martinez, we talked about him already. He dominated, but this Stallions defense just delivered. 8 sacks, and I think they were like 3 sacks in the first 4 plays on the other team on the Showboats plays. You can't you can't stop that. But right now the Stallions have the best scoring offense and have allowed the least points on defense among all teams in the UFL. So this is a team that is just dominating. And now that they've clicked their quarterback, things are going to look much scarier.
Yeah, they're locked in for sure, and we can just kind of ooze over the Stallions because they're far and away the best team. But I want to give a little love to the Boats here.
Yeah.
It's not love, but just kind of a little recap of what happened. They did end up using 2 quarterbacks in this one. Case Cookus has been their guy kind of throughout the first couple weeks of the season, but they did bring in Troy Williams and kind of benched, so to speak, Case Cookus. But I mean, the game was already kind of moving out of hand at that point. I think a big key in this game, though, is that they only amassed 20 rushing yards, which is just awful.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not good. And that came from, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different guys attempting a rush. So, when you talk about the Stallions on the other side, part of their success is that they have such a good run game. And that only came from 3 dudes. That was Maribel, Person Jr., and Martinez. So, I mean, clearly they don't really know what they're trying to do on offense, and that's leading to them not putting up as many points and not really being as consistent. And I think in turn giving the opposite offense the ball too much, and that's what we saw in this game with a 19-point blowout. So, I think that the Showboats are okay. I don't think they're the worst team in the league by any stretch. At 2-1, definitely not. But I mean, this was not a good showing. They kind of got to get things figured out.
Yeah, it's one of those asterisk games. You're playing the best team in the league,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't help that, Cookus had no time in the pocket, and that's kind of a large reason why he was taken out of the game later in the game. But they just couldn't get anything going on the ground, and then were forced to try to air it out where they had no time to let any plays develop. So tough game, but overall just a huge showing from the Stallions defense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Next game here, we saw the Houston Roughnecks take on the Michigan Panthers in a high-scoring game. The Michigan Panthers defeated them 34-20. Big play, biggest play of the season in the UFL so far happened in this game. Panthers wide receiver took a catch and just ran it in for 76 yards. So a 76-yard touchdown catch from Sims, longest play in the UFL. EJ Perry, we talked about it with Martinez kind of balling out on both sides. EJ Perry was giving him a run for his money. 208 yards passing touchdown, and then added on 60 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Right now, EJ Perry leads the league in rushing touchdowns as a quarterback, which is incredible. We've got a quarterback leading the league in rushing yards and a quarterback leading the league in rushing touchdowns. I love it. So Perry just had a dominant game. If it weren't for Martinez balling out, I think Perry was right behind him in our MVP votes here at UFL Weekly. So Perry just kind of took this game into his own hands, and they won because of it. It was incredible.
Yeah, he had an 85% completion percentage in this game, which is also kind of nuts. He was 16-19. Comes out at 84 point something, but still, we'll call it 85. Anything over like 65 is pretty damn impressive. So kudos to him on that one. But I think another story. I feel like I'm propping up the losers today. Another story with the Rockets is just they're kind of lost right now. I think that they need to have a real sit down. A la the Guardians last year when we talked about that. I think they were sitting at 1-2 or 1-3 early in the season. We were like, what are they doing? They just look bad. I mean, putting up 20 points is absolutely a good sign for them. But I mean, allowing 34 points to an offense that hasn't really done too awfully much in the first few weeks is not a great sign. And kind of the tail of the tape with the Roughnecks is they don't really have an identity offensively either. Sinnett threw the ball decently well. I mean, he almost came in at 200 yards passing, but their rushing attack isn't too great either. So I think that the Roughnecks, who are sitting at 0-3 right now, them and the Renegades both kind of struggling. But I think the Renegades are closer to glory than the Roughnecks are, which unfortunately I think makes the Roughnecks probably the worst team in the league so far.
Yep, unfortunately so.
Yeah.
The Roughnecks, we saw Sinnett kind of come in with his first start of the season and played pretty well. Again, I think it was just this Roughnecks defense that just kind of didn't really help out the defense, or didn't help out the offense, kind of keeping them playing from behind, and just both sides couldn't help each other out. So Roughnecks kind of have a few things to figure out here on both sides.
Absolutely.
Final game of the week. We went into this kind of expecting it to be game of the week, and it very much was close to it. If the defenders didn't come back with the final minute, this was it. Battlehawks versus San Antonio Brahmas. The Battlehawks came out with the victory. I know Zach and I both picked the Brahmas to kind of come in, maybe not dominate, but kind of keep it close, but come out with the victory. We were wrong. And I want to shout out especially you, homeless cop 6990, commented last week that we will apologize to the Battlehawks, and I am. Sorry I didn't have hope in you, Battlehawks, for pulling out a victory, and you did it. That came out with a really good one, especially against a San Antonio team that was hot. Unfortunately, they lose their starting quarterback after this loss too. So I'm hoping they don't just deteriorate and fall off. Hoping you stay into the game, Brahmas, rest of the week or rest of the season. We saw the return of Hakeem Butler, as we talked about a little bit earlier. Hakeem Butler was kind of quiet these past 2 weeks, but he came back with a vengeance. Went for 6 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. And then we saw We're just
Darius
here on.
Shepherd.
We're just here on.
We got like
New York
2011 Giants
Giants
on the
receivers.
mind.
Uh, Darius Shepherd came in with 3 catches, 19 yards, as he was kind of continue the previous weeks, kind of being the second guy here in the team. And Marcel Aitman, surprised he kind of fell behind on this passing attack this week, where the past 2 weeks he was the guy. He was looking really good. But I mean, hey, Battlehawks figured out the key to success in winning this one, and that was primarily just being dominant where they needed to. It was kind of like an equal attack on the ground and in the air for
Mm-hmm.
the Battlehawks, where McCarron also ran in a rushing touchdown this week. So these quarterbacks, they've got legs.
I think I saw AJ McCarron's brother, or maybe his brother-in-law. I don't know who it was, but he tweeted, "We're never going to stop hearing about this rushing touchdown." so, so shout out to AJ McCarron for finally punching one in on the ground. But I think the cool thing with this receiving room, with Hakeem Butler, Darius Shepherd, Marcel Aitman, and now Ja'Cour Pearson, I think like any week we're going to see 1, 2, or 3 of them pop off, and it could be any random combination of any of those guys. And I mean, that's not to discount any of the other dudes that they have in the receiver room there either, but they clearly have like a strong four core group of receivers on this team. And I think that they're all willing to do what it takes, whatever that is, to win games. And that's a beautiful thing. So they all kind of understand that not every single week they're going to be the star, the guy getting the rock, so it's beautiful to see the love shared around there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you have the best wide receiving group, you got it. Yeah, and then on the Brahma side, it was a tough game for them overall. And then I think we saw in the fourth quarter specifically, at least a few people noted it. We saw a few inaccurate passes coming from Garbers, and I think that kind of spoke to the wrist injury that he's kind of suffering through. Hoping that this QB change isn't completely devastating to this Brahmas team that we saw a lot of greatness from the first 2 weeks.
Agreed. And then Kyle, I'm going to throw in here recap real quick, just the standings, so we kind of have an idea of where everyone's at. On the XFL side of the league, the Battlehawks, Brahmas, and Defenders are all tied for first. I mean, that's not getting into the tiebreakers, this and that, but they all have the same record right now at 2-1, and the Renegades are holding up the bottom of the XFL division at 0-3. And then on the other side of the league, in the USFL half, the Stallions are 3-0. I would say far and away probably the best team right now, and the record reflects that. Second place is the Showboats at 2-1, the Panthers at 1-2 and third, and then the Roughnecks at 0-3 in the basement. So just kind of an overlook of the league. It's so early right now, and we were talking about the Renegades being out last year, and they ended up winning the championship. So anything can still happen, and I don't know about you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, season's still early, and these rankings are not final. These standings are not final.
Nope,
so
by no means.
Without further ado, let's get in to week 4. Do a little bit of our pick'ems here. To preface this is not betting advice. We just simply look at the current betting lines for each of this week's games and matchups, and we just make our picks. Just kind of say like, all right, I like how this team looks with that line. Sure, I think it's going to go over. Just gives us a good idea of what to expect this upcoming week. So let's look at week 4, kicking us off Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We have the Memphis Showboats at 1-2 taking on the St. Louis Battlehawks in St. Louis. Battlehawks are 2-1. Currently, the line is set at Battlehawks -7. The favorite over under set at 45.5. Zach, let's hear it.
I'm going to go ahead. This is the only game this week I should mention also where there is like a clear favorite and a clear underdog. And that's the Battlehawks are being favored according to the spread. They're at -120 and the Showboats are at +7 being +100 odds. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go with the sports book here and take the Battlehawks -7. And I think I'm going to go ahead and take the over. I think that was a lot of points that the Battlehawks put up in the first this past week, and I think we just saw offense as a whole kind of take off. So I'm going to go over 45.5.
Zach, I hate to say it, but I'm going to copy both of those picks, primarily because I think the St. Louis team is going to score, and I don't think the Showboats are going to stop them. I also think the Battlehawks have a kind of weaker have a weaker defense than Birmingham did this past week. So I think the Showboats will be able to score a little bit more to get us to that over. But yeah, I think we're going to see quite a bit of points here from the St. Louis side. So give me the over as well.
Good. That means I can't lose any ground on you.
Not yet. Game 2 this weekend, we have the DC Defenders at 2-1 taking on the perfect 3-0 Birmingham Stallions. Taking on, I didn't say the time, 7 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night. We currently have the line set in the Stallions' favor. You said this was the biggest line, Zach, but I think the sports books beg to differ. Stallions are -8 line, so they're favored by -8. Over under set at 47.
Well, judging off last week, we saw these two teams put up a combined 62 points, which is that's a hefty amount of points. And both of them have been pretty consistent about scoring a decent chunk of points. I mean, the Stallions are clearly the best offense in the league, and the Defenders have kind of figured it out lately on the offensive side. So I'm gonna go ahead and take. I think Birmingham's going to cover. I'm going to take Birmingham -8, and on the over under, I'm going to go over 47.
Instead of picking the same as I want to, I'm going to take DC +8. I initially was going to say I think Birmingham's also going to cover, but you know what? Eight's a big line. It's a big line for a DC
It
team
is.
that can also score. So sure, give me DC +8, and because of that, give me the over as well. Um, I think the Stallions are going to score points, and if DC is going to stay in this game, they also have to. So we're going to see points galore on Saturday. Look forward to it.
Yeah, I think that the Defenders and the Battlehawks are probably the two closest teams to the Stallions level and are most likely
I
to
think
cover.
so.
So I think that that's a good pick.
Next game, third game on Saturday, also at 7 p.m. So check your local listings on Fox because you have two 7 p.m. games on Saturday,
Very interesting.
both on Fox. So check your local listings on which game you get. But we've got the Michigan Panthers at 2-1 taking on the also 2-1 San Antonio Brahmas Saturday at 7 p.m. The line is currently set at San Antonio Brahmas -1, almost looking like a pick 'em here. Over under set at 41. What you got?
I'm going to go ahead. I think that this is the one that I probably feel the most confident about so far.
Ooh.
I'm going to take the Panthers +1. I think that San Antonio is going to take a week or two to figure out what they're doing with the quarterback situation, how they're settling into it. So I'm going to go Michigan +1. And for that same reason, I'm going to take the under because I think San Antonio might struggle to put up some points in this one. So, and we've already seen that Michigan's defense is legit. So I'm going to go ahead and go Michigan +1, under 41.
I'm going to take the opposites on both of those.
Mm.
I think Dormity's going to come in here. I think AJ Smith, offensive coordinator for San Antonio, is going to piece this offense together. Maybe John Shea Kirkland throws 2 passes this game. But I think San Antonio keeps rolling. They take this loss against the Battlehawks. They get a healthy quarterback under center. They look good. I still think it's going to be a really close one. So I'm excited for this game big time. I think both of these teams are looking great if they can. I'm also going to take the over. I think both of these teams can score, will score. I think EJ Perry's going to have a game. I just hope Dormady can keep up with him as well on the Brahmas side. and Jake Bates is going to kick 5 60-yard field goals.
Jake Bates.
He had a 55-yarder this past week. The dude's insane. So, give me the over.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead. I'll do the honors. I'll take
it.
the singular Sunday game here. Sunday, 2 p.m. game. We have the Renegades are taking on the Roughnecks. And the line is currently set at -3 in the Renegades' favor. So Renegades are -3, Roughnecks are +3, and the over-under is at 46.5. What are we feeling, Kyle?
I am going to take Arlington -3. I think this Roughnecks team looks rough. It's a rough Roughnecks team. So I think Arlington, they just barely got a loss this past week. I think they come out and they're just like, we got to get our first win, guys. So I think they come out looking for that first win a little bit more than the Roughnecks are. As they game of the week right here, 2-0-3 teams facing off.
Someone's got to win.
This whole Sunday game, just what we needed. But I really do think the Renegades kind of take this one away, and I think they cover that -3 spread. But I also think this game stays below 46.5. This is a high line, and I truly think it stays down. I think these offenses aren't that high caliber to put up a 46.5 point game.
Well, I am going to go with you on Arlington -3, but I'm going to go ahead and get adventurous, and I'm going to take the over. I'm going to say that Houston puts up 20 points, Arlington puts up 27 or 28 points, and that will go ahead and push the over on this one. So I think that I don't have any reasoning behind that, but I'm just feeling good.
Love it. That's all you need. Just a vibe. Just a vibe check on the over-under. It's what you need.
Sometimes, yep.
All right, so those were our week 4 picks. We recapped week 3. I am out of focus on camera. It'll get to me. But that's it. We'll wrap it up right there. I think I'm going to try to figure out, probably pay for something on Fox to get this this doubleheader, this same time game on Saturday. Mm-hmm. Have one on the laptop, have one on TV. I'll figure something out. That's interesting. I don't know. That's one of those scheduling things where you're just like, why? What are we doing here?
Right?
4 games, 2 on each day. But Fox wanted it. Go for it, Fox. You figure it out.
It's just screaming to get into the West Coast market. That's what it's screaming.
Sure.
Right?
They can have it. But all right. That'll do it for this week of UFL Weekly. Thank you for tuning in. If you are listening to us again, you can find us on YouTube at UFL Weekly. And if you're watching us, if you saw me do the double thumbs up for fireworks earlier, there it is again.
Yeah.
You can listen to us on all podcast platforms. And again, thank you for tuning in. If you can or are willing to, a rate, a comment, a like, subscribe. Really means a lot to us. Let us know your thoughts on Jacquor Pearson returning. I know we're both excited, and I hope you are too. You should be. If you don't know the name, get ready. This guy is fantastic. So, again, thank you for tuning in. Shout out Adrian Martinez, our Week 3 MVP. We'll talk to you next week.
See ya.